My name is Peter Tilde, and I'm a park ranger in the Scottish Highlands. For new readers, here's a summary. My wife and I moved to Scotland in 2004. Our home sits in a karst village at the edge of a forest, and I was enticed to this place by a job prospect that ultimately sealed our doom. I'm a former police officer, but it wasn't until I entered this forest that I experienced true fear. I have seen things over the past 20 years that would ice your flesh. Undead corpses live in the dens of the heart of the woods. On my first night shift, I encountered them in a haunted school, and I scarcely escaped with my life. Matthew Wright was the aged man who offered me the role. He warned me that horrors hid in the forest, but he failed to divulge that this would be my prison. If any villager attempts to leave this place, they join the legends of the undead terrors within the forest. And that is why I sacrifice myself to the woods on a nightly basis. It is my lot in life. The Highland of the Deads is a sick land. It demands minds, and park rangers bear that burden. In turn, this paranormal place bears the village. I wish that were the end of my tale, but life has not dealt fair cards. In 2006, after 2 years on the job, Henry was born. I can't believe we have a Scottish baby, my wife joked. I'm not sure how that's worked, Maria, I replied smiling. We're still English. You were living in denial, she said. The wee lad will be down at the pub with you and Matthew before long, downing pints and talking about that one time he saw an adder snake in the forest. I don't know. I have no idea what you two discuss. I grunted, changing the subject. My wife wouldn't let it lie. Why do you hate talking about life as a park ranger? She asked. It's just Matthew, he's my boss, and it's hard to see him as a friend, I said. I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. How would I have broached the topic? Matthew lured us here under false pretenses. The forest is cursed, we're cursed, and now our baby is cursed too. She wouldn't have believed me anyway. Oh great, I'm sounding just like the old man now, I thought. I tried to focus on the tiny beacon of light that we had brought home with us. Life had given us something pure. I had a wife and a son. Not everything about my existence was terrible. Still, you wouldn't be here if I had a pleasant story for you. It was late November 2006. Henry was 10 months old, and I was so consumed by the duties of parenthood that I hardly had the mental fortitude to endure the forest's nightly torture. I spent most nights sleeping in the sheltered room at the top of the watchtower. My heart felt lighter in truth. The woods can't hurt me anymore, I told myself. But the pathways in my sleep-deprived brain clearly weren't connecting. I should have realized that I wasn't allowing the forest to feed on my soul. And that meant it was hungry. Peter, Maria screamed. A shattering cry of agony woke me up from my pre-work nap. Drenched in sweat, I rubbed my eyes and glanced at the alarm clock, 9:30 p.m. An hour before my shift began. Maria, I sleepily groaned. Henry's gone, she shrieked in a voice barely human. Every tendon in my body tensed. I leapt up, donned my ranger gear, and rushed into the baby's room. The windows had been shattered, and Henry's empty cot rocked eerily in the wind. I heard the smash, and oh, Peter, he was already gone when I came upstairs, Maria sobbed. Before screaming again, who would take him? Who would do this? I don't know, Maria, I said, embracing my wife, but we'll bring him. I'll find him. I ran out of the house, beelining for my car. I noticed black clouds blending with the night sky. A storm approached. My neighbor Tommy was standing in his front garden. With elbows pointing outwards, he clasped his hips with his hands. He was sucking his teeth and disapprovingly shaking his head. Careful on your shift tonight, Peter, he warned me. Weather's taking a... Tommy, I need you and Maggie to watch Maria for me, I said, unlocking my car. The man frowned. What the devil is in the matter with you, lad? I pointed animatedly at the non-existent second floor window. When Tommy looked up at it, his eyes widened. What's happened there? He asked. I don't know, I said, opening the car door. But I don't care about that, Tommy. Henry's gone. I didn't stop to say anything else. Something in my gut told me I had to drive. Henry was in the forest. I could feel it. I sped through the deserted streets of our village, heading onto the curved road which led into the highlands of the dead. And as I drove, I became aware of a growling rumbling from the sky above, a guttural groan, and then a blinding bolt of lightning illuminated the forest ahead. It was followed by a menacing thunderclap and a torrential downpour of rain. When I eventually reached the watchtower, the storm had reached a feverish crescendo of light and sound. The wooden structure was swaying uncertainly under the strain of the wind's endless onslaught. And as another lightning bolt struck the forest, it illuminated the sheltered room at the top of the watchtower. That was then when I noticed something truly dreadful. The silhouette of a tall creature with spindly arms and legs. It almost had the shape of a woman, and in its arm it cradled a bundle. Henry. The lightning disappeared, and the room plunged back into the darkness. I flew out of my car and trudged through the thick, slushy muck leading up to the watchtower staircase, lighting the way with my torch. I took the 2 steps at a time, repeatedly losing my footing on the drenched metalwork. Sudden smashing noise startled me, and I braced myself against the handrail. I'm surprised I heard it over the roar of the rain and thunder, but parental instincts are imaginably powerful, and the hair on my skin was standing upright. I leant over the side of the railing, looking up to the top of the watchtower, and then I screamed in horror as I saw the 2 shriveled, discolored arms shakily stretching over the edge of the top floor's railing. Fingers of an abnormal length were curled around a familiar star-covered blanket. There was absolutely no doubt in mind. Henry was inside. No! I screamed. I was still 20 feet from the top of the tower, and I wasn't going to make it in time. The fingers released, and the bundle plummeted. I felt the world slow around me. As I curled my back over the edge of the railing, I watched the blanket unravel above me and little Henry, with limbs flailing and tumbled out of it. His terrified eyes were swimming with tears, and he screeched maniacally as he fell towards me. His body clunkily connected with my chest, and I frantically scrambled up to scoop him up. Against all odds, I caught him. I lost my footing for a second, but I managed to brace my body against the railing, and then I pulled the 2 of us to safety. Heart racing, I fled down the staircase, and I was perplexed to find another park ranger vehicle parked alongside mine. It was Matthew. What are you doing here? I screamed over the rain. Maria called me, Matthew shouted. Is Henry okay? Leave us alone, I growled, barging past the man. You've been slipping up there on your shifts, Matthew continued. Not venturing into the forest, not feeding it. Have you been watching me? I asked. I have a village to protect, Peter, the man said. Then you take over, I yelled. I have a baby, I don't sleep. You didn't say I couldn't spend my shift in the watchtower. You haven't been giving the forest what it needs, Peter, Matthew said, so it found another way to get what it wanted. You need to take Henry home, I said, ignoring the man's chastising comments. I took Henry's car seat from my vehicle and belted him to Matthew's car. Then I turned to face the top of the watchtower. I hadn't seen the looming, slender creature emerge. Is it still up there? I wondered, bracing for the sight of a dark shape on the staircase, but nothing came. I'm an old man. I don't have much fuel left in the tank, boy. Man coughed. You don't want me to take the reins. I'd doom us all into oblivion. What did I see up there? I asked, ignoring him. A tall woman snatched him and... Woman? Matthew asked, eyes wide, lip trembling. Yes, I said. Well, something that looked like one. Matthew eyed the watchtower. Before running around to the driver's door of the car, he took one last look at me and uttered a parting warning. Stay in the woods tonight, he cried hoarsely. Do not retreat to the watchtower. I watched the man repeatedly and speedily drive away, and I sighed heavily. I cared only that Henry was being taken to safety. But as I stood in the heavy downpour, drenched to the bone, I wondered, I wondered whether I might perish from hypothermia rather than whatever nightmare lurked in the woods. I had given the forest what it wanted, not fear. It demanded attention. My baby's life had been almost been snatched from me. What more could the Highlands want? Surely I had paid for my crime of neglecting the wretched place over months. I wish Matthew had told me what would come next. The storm ceased, not slowly, not naturally. All sound abruptly halted, as did the rain and the lightning. The clouds rapidly vanished, giving way to a patch of moonlight on the small clearing in which I found myself. A rumble began beneath my feet, the sound of earthly shifting. And then a hand sprouted from the soil before me. The same hand I had seen earlier in the evening. Spidery fingers shot outward at a terrifying speed. Before I had a moment to react, a ghoulish palm had planked itself on my face. I sank into blackness. I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in the world of that woman, that thing. And she showed me terrors that even after all these years I still struggle to put into words. I won't tell you all the things I saw. Some things I just cannot and should not be seen. She showed me the bodies of my loved ones. Such visual image. Almost tangible. And I still remember Maria's face. Tears of blood trickled from her gouged eyes, staining her pale cheeks. The woman tortured me with these visions for hours. When I woke, I was tucked under a blanket in my car. I panicked for a second, believing I'd shirked my duty, but then I saw Matthew's car behind me. He was sitting on the bonnet. I emerged from my vehicle on unsteady legs and checked my watch. It was sometime after 7 in the morning. The dawning sun cast a fantastic glow over a forest which suddenly seemed so calm and soothing, a different realm than the one on the night before. I found you in the grass, Matthew said. Thought you'd be more careful and comfortable in the car. I nodded, not willing to thank the man who sentenced me to that hellish life. It doesn't have to be this way, I said. There has to be a way that we can end all of this. Matthew paused for a long time before saying something utterly unexpected. You're not the only ranger burdened with this task. This undead affliction is a disease. It's spreading. There are other villages and hamlets cursed by her. What is she? I asked. Nobody knows, he replied. Well, somebody does, I said. I can't let Henry suffer this fate. I have to find a way to save him. No, I have to find a safe... all of us. I won't be around to see that boy, the old man said. I'm so tired. And after so many years, I'm starting to understand what Matthew meant. It was a 2018 winter gathering, a pre-Christmas celebration for the entire village. 150 people, packed like sardines in a cozy hall. A night of music, performances, and talks from the prominent figures in the village. An amalgamation of festivities. Do you mind doing that thing, honey? I asked Maria. My wife raised her eyebrows suggestively. In the middle of the town hall? I snorted. Not that thing, the back thing. Oh, right. Maria laughed. You're such an old man. I'll be standing up there for ages, I said, shifting uncomfortably in my seat. I don't want to get that annoying knot in the bottom of my spine. You'll be up there in 5 minutes tops, she laughed. 36 is painful, eh? You should know, I replied, grinning. I received a thump on the arm, understandably, make risky jokes, and receive fitting riddles. But Maria chuckled and twisted my torso to the side. Before lovingly massaging my shoulders, I locked eyes with the neighbors, Tommy and Maggie, who were sitting with a couple of rows behind us. Mags rolled her eyes at me. Tommy rubbed his chin thoughtfully before whispering something to his wife. She shook her head. Oh, look, Tommy said, pointing as the mayor walked towards the stage. It's Mrs. Avers. Stop it, Maggie tutted, slapping her husband's wrist. And now Peter Tully will say a few words, Mayor Eileen Balfour announced. Put your hands together for our trusty park ranger. I'm not a public speaker, but given the year's events, the villagers were expecting some promising words about the future. Matthew Wright had, 1 month prior, passed away. And as much as I loathed the man for tying me to that wretched place, I understood why he had done it. He tried to make amends. He had protected my family over the years. He had even searched for answers that might save the village. After claiming to have given up on the world, he craved redemption in his eyes. Matthew Wright was a desperate man. I may well have done the same in his shoes. Maria, Henry, and I were the only people beside his hospital bed. A couple of villagers stopped by, of course, but his family died long ago. He was the last in a line of Wrights cursed by the Highlands of the Dead. Who's gonna keep Dad in line, Uncle Matt? Henry asked. The old man chortled, before spiraling into a coughing fit. That's karma, I told him, smiling. He smiled back. It's a shame that we finally see eye to eye on my deathbed, he croaked, chuckling. There are, of course, a few things we should discuss before I pass. Maria awkwardly cleared her throat. Come on, Henry. Matthew beamed at my wife and son as they walked out of the door. A beautiful family, he said. I nodded. I'm lucky. No, Matthew replied. You were unlucky to meet me. Look at you. You're not that boy anymore. I stole your life from you. I should have. I shook my head. You warned me that there were things you couldn't tell me. Dangers in the forest. I heard you, and I felt a knot of fear in my gut. Could have listened to that instinct, but I didn't. I was carrying my own trauma. I had something to prove. But you should know that I chose to start life here. And I have family. I'm luckier than most. The old man spluttered. You know, I had a wife once. You never told me that, I said. Matthew shrugged. Well, long before you arrived in this village, I had already lived a full life. Paisley and I were trying for a baby. What happened? I asked. They came at night, he whispered. Inhuman things from the old factory over the ridge. Nobody really knows what happened there, but we know those things used to be people. They took her. They took Paisley. The old man cried, and I comfortingly placed a hand on his shoulder. I was a park ranger. I knew about the horrors of the Highlands, of course. Matthew continued. It was a secret passed down from the rangers to their children. Each of us took up the mantle from our parents before us. There were more of us back then. It seems the village gets smaller and smaller with every passing year. And now, you're the only ranger left. What comes after you? I don't know. But we mustn't let Henry take your place, Peter. We mustn't. I won't let him step foot in this woods, I said. But I'm starting to lose hope, Matthew. For years, we've tried to uncover the root of this evil. The family has been here for generations, and even they didn't know what to do. It didn't always used to be so terrible in our village. There were good times before. Well, before the heartbreak, the tragedy. As for the land beyond the forest, well, the Highlands of the Dead spread farther than our patch of hell, he said. I've told you this before. There will be someone out there who knows the truth. How the tables have turned, I replied. I remember when I was the one trying to convince you to hold on to your hope. Well, that was before there were people in my life I could call. Matthew started, trailing off before sentimentality got the better of his Scottish sturdiness. I'm thinking about what comes after you, Peter. I don't think you've accepted that you won't be here forever. I looked out the horizontal glass pane between Matthew's room and the waiting area. I could see Maria and Henry talking enigmatically. My son was somehow 12 years old. Time had filtered at a cruel rate. In my eyes, I was still that 22-year-old boy who moved to the village with dreams of a quiet country life. Keep searching for your answer, Peter. Remember what you're protecting, he said. But in the event that you should fail, you need to make sure that somebody takes the reins. No, I said firmly. I will be the last park ranger. Or at least, the last one who does anything other than spotting the forest fires and helping hikers. There we go, Matthew whispered, smiling. I was worried you'd lost your youthful spark for a moment. I don't want you to end up like me, son. I smiled, patting the man's shoulder again, before standing up and heading towards the door. Before you go, he suddenly said, we're trapped in this village. Help can still come to us. And that was the last thing he ever said to me. After mulling over Matthew's parting words, I made an arrangement with Mayor Balfour. She, like many others in the village, was aware what lay in the highlands. Not all who visit the village become tied to this place. Tourists come and go from time to time, and there are even villagers who have left without resistance. But it is impossible to say who the highland will or will not spare. We don't take risks. We, those of us who keep this secret, keep our loved ones here. I have spent 20 years convincing Maria to never leave this place. I'm not a good speaker, I said, laughing into the microphone. But Alien insisted that I speak to you about a guest. Before I could continue, a chair abruptly squeaked against the floorboards. Heads turned to face a mysterious outsider who strolled down the main aisle. Hello, the man bellowed, chuckling heartily. I'll take over, lad. I can see that you don't want to be standing up there. An Englishman in a room full of Scotsmen? Oh, never ends well, does it? The room erupted into a chorus of laughter, and I awkwardly shuffled away from the microphone, content to be standing silently alongside Alien. When the man arrived on the stage, he hopped up the ease. Good evening, my fellow Highlanders, he roared. My name is Sjarken Green. I come from a little hamlet just over the hills. You might know the one, or maybe you don't, because, well, you don't really leave this place, do you? I anxiously eyed Alien, and she nodded her head. We had not come to the decision easily, but it was time to do things differently for those who had come before us. I just dreaded how my wife and son would react to Sieran's announcement. The man sighed, planting his hands on the podium before him. You see, there's something that many of you know, something that you've not wanted to tell your loved ones. A secret of the land passed from generation to generation. And I know all about that. These highlands have been host to many a sorry night. Or sight. See, our hamlet used to be much bigger, and then they came. Dark things at night. They killed our family and friends. And we swore it would never happen again. We realized that the secrets would kill us all. A hushed wave of whispers spread through the hall, and I locked eyes with Maria. What's happening? She mouthed at me. I had a response. There is a special duty performed by the park rangers of this village. Well, the sole remaining ranger, and it doesn't involve spotting fires or hurting the ship. It's... Some things are better left unsaid, Tommy suddenly shouted, rising to his feet. Stop making a scene, Tommy, Maggie begged. I'm protecting you, dear, he said. Yes, there are things that happen in those woods, but the people of this village don't need to know about them. Wrong, Sieran shouted, silencing my neighbor. Some of you have seen things you couldn't explain. Perhaps you have dismissed those things, but judging on the look on your faces, I'd say not. You are not safe, I ask again. How many of you have left this place? The room fell silent. Sierra nodded. And how many had you stayed? Because at some point in your youth, someone warned you not to leave. I saw faces twist and turn. Families eyed one another suspiciously. Eileen's husband cast a disparaging glare in her direction. Maria surveyed me with teary eyes. I do not blame you for the village spending a century concealing this treacherous truth, he said. But we have watched tragedy after tragedy befall our land, have we not? And with each fresh horror, darkness grows. Why now? A woman cried from the crowd. Why tell us after all these years? Siren turned to face me. Asked the park ranger. I eyed the vicious mob sitting in the hall. Maria couldn't even look at me. Henry maintained his composure, but the color had drained from the little boy's face. I made a decision, I said. A decision backed by Matthew Wright himself. Don't bring his name into this, the man snarled. You're not one of us. Yes, we are, Henry screamed, attempting to stand up. Maria held him down. Mateo and I have seen things that most of you would never understand. I continued, striving to hide my unsteady disposition, and we decided to break the cycle. Please, Mark, Tommy said, with cheerful eyes. Enough, you said your piece, it's done now. I shook my head. It isn't done, and it'll never be done. Do you want to know what lies in that forest? The dead. Are dead. And we will continue to feed these highlands for as long as we do nothing. Look at our children. Do they deserve this? There's nothing that can be done, an old woman called. All who have tried have died. Not true, Siren interrupted, pushing me aside and leaning towards the microphone. I have tried, Peter has tried, and we're still here. We know about the woods, the highlands of the dead, but we keep it to ourselves and nothing bad happens, a man shouted. Oh, sir, bad things happen all the time, Siren said coldly. Peter Tully has been giving his soul to the woods for 14 years. He's a shell of a man, look at him, he does it for you. And if he were to stop, well, the forest would have to look elsewhere to feast on souls. Something has cursed this land, I interjected. We don't know what lies at the heart of the highlands. It wears many faces and takes many forms. All we know is that it never stops, Siren finished. Mark, I understand that you want to protect us, Tommy said, but my mother's told me things that, look, it's just, we can't fight it. Natural or unnatural, the might of the highlands will always best us. I'm not going to let this place take my boy, I whispered, eyeing Henry. Maria lifted her eyes to meet mine. They were brimming with tears, but she made my guess. And that was something. Siren patted my back and took over. I visited one of the lake towns recently, saw an old friend of my grandfather. He told me a story about a witch. Oh, come on, a man sighed. Listen, boy, Siren spat. You don't want to test me. I'll drag you down to the forest myself and show you the... Siren Green paused, collecting himself. All that matters is there might be a way to lift this curse, to free you from the death hanging over this place. Peter Tully and I will go to the woods tonight, and we will end this. But if we don't, well, at least you know the truth, that somebody brave can take up the mantle. It never should have been Peter's cross to carry. Matthew Wright forced him here, and... Let's not speak ill of the dead, I said, sensing the whole atmosphere in the hall. Before I go... Where are you going? Maria cried in floods of tears. We'll talk later, I said. Look after Henry. All will be well, Siren promised, ushering me towards him. We will gather here in the morning. The crowd talked restlessly, and Eileen rushed to the microphone as Siren and I slipped out of the back door. I saw Henry standing and watching me with a lost expression. That went about as well as expected, Siren said, unlocking his vehicle. I sighed, climbing into the passenger seat. Just go. As we tore off the tarmac, a few villagers poured out of the front doors and watched us drive away. They were never going to accept it, Siren said. They've always known, deep down, but they didn't want to know. Would you have done what I did? I asked. I already have, the man sighed. I had a smaller crowd to appease. Mind. They deserved to know a long time ago, I said. Well, ignorance is a bliss, Siren replied. But we don't have that in luxury in Highlands. I learned that the hard way. He took a dirt road into the thick of the woods. I frowned. I usually turn a little further up the main. We all learn hard lessons, Siren said, interrupting me. My hamlet used to be a village, roughly the size of yours, but that all changed when the creatures came. Matthew told you all about it, didn't he? Yes, the incident at the factory, I said, frowning. But this road is the... And it wouldn't have happened if everybody had known, Siren interrupted a second time. Since then, every time the creatures come, and they always come, my neighbors know what to do. Of course, they don't know what do I keep to keep them safe. There are still some secrets we must carry to the grave, isn't that right, Park Ranger? He slowed to a stop and secured the handbrake. We were sitting in the middle of the forest. What are you trying to say, Siren? I asked, unsettled by his shifting demeanor. The man said I wasn't going to come here without a plan. And do you know what I found when I did a little background research on you? A terrible story from London. A newspaper article about a police officer who fumbled negotiations with a robber. Do you ever dream of the little girl, Peter? The one who died as a result of your miscalculation? I clenched my fists. It wasn't like that. I didn't know he would shoot, but it's no secret. The whole city knew. That's why we moved to a place in which nobody knew your name? Steven asked. Why are you doing this? I asked. Do you not trust me? Is that the problem? I want the same thing you want. I know you do, Peter, he said. And aren't the Highlanders lucky to have such a brave Englishman on their side? He's come to save the day. The Scottish peasants would be lost without you. I don't really care about your ancient prejudice, I said, sighing. Let's just finish this, and the sudden blow to my temple sent a ripple of pain throughout my body. Acting on impulse rather than any conscious form of thought, I scrambled the car's door handle and I fell hard into the forest floor. Prejudice? It's not as personal as that, Siren said, stepping out of the driver's side. I mean, I hate the English, don't get me wrong, but this isn't some meaningless act. No, this is about the survival of my people, I groaned, clutching the side of my head. Then stumbling shakily to my feet, the vision in my right eye was uneven and blurry. My left eye was just as useless as ever, but I could vaguely distinguish Siren approaching with the torch in his hand, the blunt instrument he had used to assault me. I don't know how to stop any of this, Siren admitted, but I do know how to give the woods what it wants, and it's been craving you for a long time. I think it finally may spare my Hamlet. All I have to do is give you to it. So I didn't lie, Peter. Not really. This is for the greater good. I stumbled to the side, supporting my weight on the car. What about this village? They're the people of Highlands too. Siren shrugged and striding towards me. Not my people. Concussed and near blind, I raised an arm to defend myself, but Siren softly bludgeoned me in my face for a second time, and I fell to the ground in agony, spitting teeth and blood into the dirt. I tried to crawl away. Family, Peter, he said. You understand, don't you? That's what it's all about, I told you. I don't care about Scotland or England. I just care about my own flesh and blood. I've got 2 boys at home, so try to understand that. I rolled onto my back, propping my body against a nearby tree. The wind picked up, and I heard strange, guttural noises from the earth below us. It's almost time, Siren said, raising his torch one last time. The forest will be so thankful that I brought you. You have saved people, Peter, and just not your people. Barely clinging to consciousness, I spat blood at his feet. The man laughed. Hey, I'll give you that one, Englishman, he said, patting the red specks on his trouser legs. And don't worry, I'll make this quick. I promise, I'm a man of my word. I crokily laughed. You're no man. Siren scowled, raising his torch to finish the job. I closed my eyes, awaited the embrace of the darkness. I could only see Maria and Henry. I prayed that they would find a way to free themselves of Highlands. I didn't want their forgiveness, just their safety. A thud sounded, but I didn't feel a thing. And when I opened my eyes, I found myself facing an unlikely sight. Tommy Buchanan. He was towering over Siren's crumpled body, and there was a shovel in his hands. A shovel which he promptly dropped to the ground before rushing over to me. He's no man, and he's certainly no Scotsman. Come on, Peter. I'm parked a dozen yards down the dirt track, he said, panting, and as he reached down and hoisted me to my feet. Let's get you to the hospital. I hobbled to the car, supporting my weakening body on Tommy's shoulder. Adrenaline kept me awake, but that was a good thing. I didn't want to pass out with a head injury. I closed the door, and Tommy rushed to the driver's side as his body fitted past the windscreen. I squinted, desperately trying to discern a moving shape at the edge of the tree line. Siren. Drive, he cried as Tommy clambered into the car. Siren threw his body onto the bonnet. His bloody, bruised face matched my own. Watch out, I cried as Tommy rapidly reversed the car. The rear bump collided with the sturdy tree trunk, and Siren crumpled into the windscreen. "I'll kill you both," he said in a half-conscious grumble, whilst weakly pounding the glass. As Tommy reached for the door handle, the wind began to wail shrilly. And then, in a flash of movement, Siren's body was torn from front of the car. Tommy and I watched in confusion as a shape rose from the dirt. A horrifying tall spectre with the faint shape of a woman, but it was not human. I'd seen horrors like it before. The undead entity meshed seamlessly with the forest ground, and its branch-like arms seized Siren by the throat. Something about her was different from the other creatures I'd seen in Highlands. The tattered clothes, so similar. "Mercy," Tommy whispered. "It can't be." "What?" I asked, head falling apart at the seams. "Shirley Pond," he said. I recognized the name. I hadn't heard it since the day I moved into the village. 14 years earlier, Matthew had told me about a park ranger who disappeared into the woods, the one who came before me. My friend furiously revved the engine and beelined for the main road. We left Siren and the undead spirit of the Shirley Pond behind. Since that first night in the forest, I have always suspected that it might have been her whose gnarled, rotting hands saved me from the schoolteacher. I do not know for certain, but I know that she saved Tommy and me.